to continue? Okay, I realize now that because I am in the country of Turkey, and it is the home of Olympic weightlifting, and everybody wants to talk about strength training, so I figure I will talk about it now and give everyone the chance to say what they want to say. What was that? Oh. And give everyone a chance to say what they want to say about strength training for young kids. I am sure that perhaps what I'm going to say is different from what you have heard before, and with all seriousness, I will say that you can, of course, you don't have to believe me. You can choose to do what you want to do, but I think it is in your interests to think about the long-term development of the athlete. Like I spoke about yesterday, hormones come to the children when they come. If you do something that isn't going to support that hormonal development, then you may end up with an athlete who becomes too tight. Perhaps their growth doesn't come all the way, and you may limit the potential of that particular swimmer. If, on the other hand, you can time your strength development to match their overall body development, if you can have those two things match and work together, then you have a better chance of laying both of those on top of their swimming development. You will then get an athlete who performs the best for the most years and for the longest time in their life. And I think, it's just my opinion, but I think that as coaches, that's what we're trying to do. So, everything I'm going to talk about is going to be based on that principle. What to do, when to do it, and how to react to the results of the decisions that you choose. Okay? Okay. Like I have been saying every time I stand up here, the first thing we want to know is how the body actually works. Once we understand that, we can understand how the body, when we know how the body works, we think, how can we use that body to further our swimming? And that swimming is different from every other sporting activity. We went through that. The reason it's different from every other activity is because we are not just on land interacting with gravity. Okay? Now, think about this. The human skeletal system has evolved for us to be on land. Every time I make a move, gravity is pushing down on me this way. And the main hinges in my body, in my hips, in my head and neck, in my feet, reacts to gravity pushing on me this way. If I am to fall, if I were to trip or lose my balance, my body naturally will do what it can to recover that balance. Because my brain is wired to do that, not to fall. In swimming, something completely different happens. In swimming, we are laying on the water and gravity is acting on us at every point along our body, this way. At the same time, remember, we have buoyancy of the water, and especially of the water in our lungs, pushing upward only at one point of ourselves. The rest of us is trying to sink, both this way and this way. And here's the important thing. When we lose our balance in the water, what happens? Think about that. Think about a non-swimmer. Think about someone who falls in the water and drowns. The reason they drown is because, yes, when they lose their balance, their brain tries to get land balance, and the water doesn't cooperate. Balance in the water is a flotation. It's all those things I said. Pushing your chest down, getting the air up. But if you lose your balance in the water, and all of a sudden your head comes up, your brain says, oh, we want to be this way, the water's not cooperating. That's how people go under and eventually drown, who don't know how to swim. Why am I telling you this? Because the muscle systems that you're trying to develop are those that will contribute to having balance in the water. They are not the same muscle systems required to be strong or fit on land. There will be many commonalities, and we do want to move better. We do want to have better quality of movement, and we want to be able to have everything work correctly. But it is not a like-for-like transfer completely on land. Some things transfer, and some things don't. Follow? So, we want to think of how the body actually works. The next thing we want to think of is, what pathologies are getting in the way of our swimming strokes? Many of you, take a look. How many of you swimmers? Yeah, they're all like this. How many? I'm trying to think. Well, you know all these postures. And many of these pathologies come from several reasons. Some, or this one. You see this? All your swimmers like this? A lot of them. The reason is, from a dry land perspective, if you do this all the time, it pulls your muscles in this way. If you don't balance with some back scapular work, you end up with the slouch. If you sit in a chair all day and you don't walk enough, move enough, run enough, and the only exercise you get is in a swimming pool, you'll get this. I tell my athletes to stand like a human being. Sometimes I just get them out of the pool and say, just stand up and be in gravity.
land gravity. Then when I get them in the water, I'm working with swimming gravity. And I want to make sure that they always know they're either in one or either in the other. So I don't let my swimmers swim, 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 touch the wall, and then go like this. Or they either have to stand up or balance in the water. Now when they're learning, first thing that happens is they'll touch, you'll see, the head will go up, and as soon as the head goes up, they want to grab the wall. The reason? Because as soon as their head breaks the surface, they are thinking land gravity. Now, if they want to go to land gravity, okay, then stand up. But you don't get to be half in and half out. So I look at swimmers and I see what pathologies are getting in the way of the movements I want to do. And I explained those movements before. The movements for backstroke, movements for butterfly, movements for breaststroke, the movements for freestyle. I want to consider the idea of the quality of their movements. Reaching to the front. Rowing on my back. Sweeping. Making the energy in here. Shooting it forward to breaststroke. Moving the water and letting it go. Those are primary human movements. Reach movements, pull movements. They're not super complicated, like some swimming textbooks would have you believe. They're basic human movements. Some of them we can support by land training. But those things will have to be then rebalanced in the water so that they can be continued. How we do that is beginning with balance and water balance. The idea of your body being in a support position in each stroke. In backstroke, that position will be here. In breaststroke, that position will be slightly with wide arms this way. Same for butterfly. Following me? That's where we begin. Oh, I got ahead of myself. I already told you about evolution, gravity, and the human skeleton. This way versus this way. You need to understand that. Okay, the next concept that's important is posture, not power. There are people that will have you believe that the most important thing is power. I can't remember what the little scientific thing that the people say. Strength, speed times velocity equals power. That works on land. That does not necessarily work in water. The reason it doesn't work in water is that power is costly. Power costs a huge amount in the physiological system in swimming. It costs far less on land. If you're running at top speed and you run out of energy, your body will keep going for a long time. Well, not a long time, but for a 100-meter race, it'll keep going. Because gravity and inertia keeps you going. In swimming, no. The minute, what swimming is about, it's a bit about creating velocity, but it's really about maintaining that velocity. As soon as you lose velocity in swimming, the results are catastrophic. You know this. You know how you know it? you've all done this. How many of you, this is what I always do. Go to a swimming meet. Go to the 100 freestyle. Stand about 10 meters from the finish and just watch every heat. Heat after heat after heat after heat. And what do you see? There's always some person, and they don't even have to have blasted out into the front. But how many times have you seen a swimmer with a body length lead with 10 meters to go and they lose the race? You've seen that a lot, haven't you? Happens all the time. Heat after heat it happens. Now imagine this. There's no race on land where that really happens. But in swimming, it happens all the time. Because if you don't manage your energy perfectly, when you run out of energy, it's catastrophic. And the way I describe that is, in swimming, like the Empire in Star Wars, the water fights back. The water fights back. It is ruthless and cruel. If you cannot maintain your velocity, you will be defeated completely. Why we do strength training is to make the body strong in the parts it needs to be strong so that your velocity can be maintained throughout the race, throughout the entire race. Okay? Now, again, into new territory, I think, and some people I work with think, can we wake up our fascial system, which is that layer of skin, or I'm not even sure what it is, that surrounds our muscles, to give our muscles a boost, to make our muscles, to make the fascial system and our muscles able to load energy and then release more energy, so that we get more than just contractile force when we're moving. We want to get a release of extra energy. And that's why you saw me having those kids on the black cords, among other things. So, remember I also spoke about what talented swimmer did was make wave-like motions when they went through. Wave patterns going through the body. In order to do that, you need, like I said, you need balance, and part of that is the scapular plane. The back muscles have to be nearly as strong as the front muscles so that things stay in alignment. Now, before starting whatever dry land program you're going to do, there are some things you need to think about. Muscles need to lengthen before they shorten. What I mean by that is, if you are restricted by a certain weight, and in your dry land training you can only move it so far, that becomes your new limitation. And with swimming, we don't want to overstretch things, but we want to get as much reach as we possibly can. So we want to make sure that our muscles lengthen before they contract, before they shorten. Now, what I wrote there was the teaching order for learning and athlete protection. And this isn't about the athletes. This is about you coaches. These are things you know to make sure that I think that you're safe with your athletes. You need to understand the human parasympathetic system. And what that's just a fancy word for the recovery of your athlete when they're doing strength work. As you know, when you break down a muscle, fibers tear, micro tears, they rebuild, and that is what makes you stronger. So far, so good. There's a whole system within the human body called the parasympathetic system that supports that rebuilding. It happens when you're asleep, mainly. But it's also when you're in a resting state. Now that turns on and off during the day, during the night's sleep. Depending on how much training you're doing in swimming versus how much land training you're doing, you need to make sure that the parasympathetic system has enough time and enough energy in terms of, food and whatnot for that rebuild to happen. If you get in a situation where you did 2 strength sessions or 3 strength sessions in a week, but at the same time you had to get up 2 or 3 times a week at 5 o'clock in the morning, and maybe your athlete had a test and they stayed up till midnight studying for that test. Now those 3 things are going to act on each other and cause you a problem. The swimmer didn't get enough recovery. You broke down their strength training muscles too much. And now you're at the end of the week and you're timing your kid and you're like, why can't they go fast? And if you don't ever get that cycle back on track, they will continue not to improve. Or even worse. The second thing you need to understand, I went out of order there. Well, no, the second thing you understand is, like I said, how the body works. You want to understand the quality of movement. We talked about that. And we also talked about strength for the water. And by that I mean the balance. Now, while I'm on that subject, I skipped over it, but I want to go back there, is breathing as a control parameter. Now, see, this is brilliant. And I know you learn this in any kind of dry land training, whether it's Olympic lifting or yoga or whatever. Breathing is very much an important part of the movement. Exhale as you're lifting. Downward dog, where you're going to breathe when that happens. Wushu, where's the breath when you're doing the punching. All this is really important because if you can teach kids to use breathing as a control parameter in their dry land training, they will get better at using breathing as a control parameter in their swimming. And we all talked about how important that was, right?
Okay. Okay.
A very famous dryland guy in the United States that I have a lot of respect for told me many years ago. He said, Chris, even in swimming, the last thing I want the athletes to think about is their shoulders and arms. I was like, what? And I wanted to argue with him because I said, swimming is all the shoulders and arms. And he said, it doesn't matter. He said, certainly on land, but even when you're in land gravity, your brain is looking in order. Your brain is thinking about the feet first. It's thinking about the hips next. It's thinking about your back and lower spine third. And only if all three of those places are sending a signal to your brain saying, everything's cool, now my shoulders will do something. And think about that. You ever see the disaster movie and, you know, the building starts shaking and it's always, oh, if I could just I could reach that thing, and they never reach it. They fall down and the hero has to save them. That's not outlandish. And the reason is because even if it's 2 inches away, your brain first says, stand me up straight, balance me. It won't even reach for that thing to save them. But a great athlete, you know, people who catch a football or do whatever, or even kick a football, even in the air, what's happening is they're aligned first with their feet, then with their hips, then with their back and lower spine, then they can do something. Now, that applies to swimming as well. The balance will be different, but we still can't turn off the fact that we are evolved land creatures. So it is helpful for swimmers to know those other points of reference in their body, even when they are not using them. So, when you're training people in dry land, and I will get there, you want them to think about those points of order. I make them think about where they're standing, where their feet are. None of this, none of this. One of my favorite tricks is, now how many of you have seen this? This mainly happens with female swimmers, but I watch a kid do a flip turn. And they flip with their knees together and go like this. Any of you have swimmers that do that all the time? I'm sure you do. It drives me crazy. I say, get out. Oh, I didn't bring my wallet. Then I take money out of my wallet. And I raise it up and say, here's $20. If you can jump and get this money, you get to keep it. And those girls will go like this. And I go, oh, no. You don't get to do this. Because I just watched you do a turn like this. So jump like this and get the money. And they're like, I can't. I'm like, then why are you pushing off the wall like that? The reason is because they're mixing swimming balance with land balance and they're getting it wrong. When you're on the wall, it's like land. Jump like you mean it. Push off like you mean it. So this is one of the ways where they start to think, oh, what are my feet doing? And then, what are my hips doing? And then finally, what can my arms do? Okay? You see those things up on the right there? They need to be aware, both on land and in water, those different planes of movement. What's happening to them across the horizontal plane, the sagittal plane, one side and the other, and the front versus back. If they can understand how their body moves in all three of those dimensions, they'll become better athletes. Now, all these things I'm telling you, these things, to me, are more important in dryland work than how much weight you can lift, how much power you can generate on some kind of machine, or how many pounds you can squat. Those things pale in comparison to the things we're talking about now. And then the last thing on there is gravitational existence on land, which is when gravity's putting onto you, the main places that you use to balance yourselves is the pelvis, what's called the talus in your lower ankle, and your neck. The head and neck system. So if there's an earthquake right now, I guess there have been some here, those three places in your body, there, and here, they would be acting to keep me standing straight. They have a lot of mobility, and in the exercises you select and teach, you want to keep that in mind. Okay, that's the theory so far. Next comes the practice. Everybody okay with that? All right. Now, from my way of thinking, there are some primary human foundational movement patterns that you need to have to advance. These are the things that all human beings evolved to do. We did these things to survive. Number one was to squat. We ran around chasing animals, and then we went down into a squat to rest. That movement is a great movement. It is perhaps the foundational movement. I think it cures everything now. So, any exercises based on a squat will have some value. Some of the exercises I put up there are, of course, first you start with your body weight. You just want to be able to get in a squat. And it is surprising how many people can't do it. To do it well, you have to push your belly out in front of you. You have to drop your booty out behind you. I teach kids to imagine they have an aluminum foil roller in their pelvis that allows them to roll down and roll up. Only after they understand and can do that correctly do I even think about putting a load onto that movement. The next step for me with that would be what the weightlifters call a goblet squat. And with that, I get them to first hold a medicine ball or some kind of a ball. hold it in their hands, and do the exact same thing I did before. Drop all the way down without going up on their toes. When they can do that, perhaps we'll next move to a small dumbbell. Now, if you notice, I'm making these selections on the quality of the movement. I am not making this selection based on the amount of weight in my hand. This is danger, especially for the little ones. You can convince yourself that somebody squatting 80 pounds is better than someone squatting 60 pounds, but this is not necessarily the case. After that, when kids are in their late teens, you may move to a front squat, with a bar, and then only the most advanced people get to a back squat. All these go with age and body development. The decisions you make on the exercises are based on the physical and mental, I guess, how well they pay attention to you, development of the athlete. Now, for me, once you get them squatting correctly, it's not so much a matter of 10 reps or how many you're doing it. You want that movement to be perfect, and then you want that movement to be manipulated. So for me, long before I get to the end of that chain with the squat, I'm perhaps getting medicine balls, and I'm getting people to squat with the ball, stand up, throw that ball. Their partner catches it, they go down, come up. Then I might mix that movement with something else. Then I might squat and jump up and grab something. I put the squat into anything and everything. Because, like these other movements I'm going to talk about, they are basic primary movements. And the way I define those is, if we did those on the savannah 100,000 years ago, then it's probably a primary movement. Doing this, I guarantee you, is not a primary movement. Doing a curl. I don't think there was any reason for doing a curl back when we were hunting woolly mammoths. The next one is a pull. Pulling things. We've been pulling things as long as we've been human beings. In all different directions. Horizontally, vertically, sideways, one arm, both arms. Whether we were swinging in trees, pulling trees, whatever else we did, the pull is a primary movement. Like the squat, we want the pull to be effective. It's effective when our arms have a slight curve in it. It's effective when the movements are curvilinear. Watch people do the tug of war. Nobody is doing, overstretching. The hold they have on that thing is a natural human movement. You want to see a natural human movement? Go to the zoo and watch the great apes. We're related to them, and that's how they do it. There's nothing cosmetic about it. Now, teaching a pull, in the modern world, we have a million things we can use. And some of them I'll talk about, but I want to talk about some of the ones that you need to be careful with. Swim benches. Swim benches can be great. I love them. I used to use them and break them by using them so much. But one must be really careful that the pull patterns are correct. Stretch cords. You know how many kids I see? It's not about banging that thing and pulling your arm back and pulling it out of the socket. That's not going to help a swimmer. What's going to help the swimmer is if you pull that cord absolutely correctly within your normal range of motion. And when it pulls back at you, that you resist in your normal range of motion. Climbing a rope. Same thing. Within your range of motion that works for you. How many of you use, you guys have TRX here? TRX, love it. My favorite. I have 30 of them across the wall. But you don't just get in the TRX and start yanking it. Because you looked at the video and saw those army guys doing it. You actually have to pay attention to what you're looking at and making sure your athletes match that picture. And it's very subtle. I always say, if you do the TRX yourself, you will surely feel that in a minute. You know, if you're in one of these things where you're reaching, you're rowing yourself up, you know that if you reach without any curve and pull, oh, it's agony. And then eventually you get there, and then eventually you can go up. Right? That's what it feels like. So you can't be having your kids go through that. They need to know to set the machine or the apparatus within their range of motion and use it. All those pulls have value, but they only have value if they're advancing your cause of quality of movement within the normal range of human faculty, of the human ability to move. And remember, yesterday we talked about movements outside of our sight line and how ineffective they are. The next one is a hip hinge, which seems to be all the rage these days. Hip hinge. Now, if you notice, I kind of did that a little bit wrong. All right? I need a teeny little curve in here. If I lock my knees out, I'm already at risk. But, you know, eons ago, we had to pick things up. And we had to reach down to get them. And our hips have evolved to hinge. Having said that, we all know middle-aged men like myself all over the, I don't even know if I can call myself that anymore. I'm downright old. But we know that middle-aged men all over this planet, back pain. Why is that? Because we spend a lot of time sitting in chairs most of our life, like you're all doing. And modern life, we have lost the ability to actually do a hip hinge the way that we're supposed to do it. But it is nonetheless a primary human movement. And we can teach it to kids if we teach it absolutely correctly. First, with just your body weight. Then, I use the word assisted, but I don't really mean that. I mean with some kind of resistance in either both hands or one hand or whatnot. And then finally, that movement across all planes. Sagittal, horizontal. Well, I guess there's no real front and back. I hope you're following the way I'm doing it, because I'm doing this like one building block at a time. If you thought I was going to stand here and start talking about exercises, like just saying they're great, I'm going one step at a time before I get to actual exercises. I'm giving you from theory to the theory of practice to the actual practice. Pushing things. That is again one of our common human movements. Pushing things up. Pushing things forward. Pushing ourselves up. All these are good things. Closed chain and open chain. Yeah, that means you can pull something towards you. I mean, no. You can push something away from you, and you can do that independently or two hands together. You can modify it. One of the exercises I'll talk later is I love doing push-ups with one hand on a medicine ball and one hand on the ground. I love that. It teaches the body asymmetry, but it makes it match what it needs to match to get itself up. Now you can use that concept with any of these movements, but it's a primary human movement. Lunges. Again, we had to do this back in caveman days. Sometimes going down, sometimes not. We are built to do that. We are evolved for our hips to do that. But the problem is in life, we don't have to do that so much anymore. So we get knock-knee people. And when you're in the dry land room, you can start to move physicality and land-based talent forward by getting people to lunge. Lunge while walking, lunging in place, and even split squatting. And then eventually even doing all those things, holding a ball, maybe holding a kettlebell or a dumbbell, holding weight, and then moving all three planes at the same time. Imagine just doing that, and then imagine doing that with a weight, and then maybe imagine just doing that with with a weight on one side and a weight on the other side. These things are the beginnings of improving quality of movement. Carrying things. Probably one of the movements that helped us survive. You know, our ancestors were carrying everything, and so can we. And it can be certainly part of our dryland training. That's so well known, I don't have to go any farther with that. And then all kinds of ground-based movements, crawling, ab work on the ground, supported and unsupported. A lot of our strength was, based on our ground movements. And we come up with devastatingly effective exercises to wake that stuff up and bring it back. I tell coaches to begin with minimum equipment exercise plans, especially the younger they are. The younger they are, you don't need much equipment at all. You should err on the side of progressing towards more advanced movements as they get older. Don't start with a bar on young kids until they can move their own body. I'm sure many of you have heard the concept dynamic warm-ups. And I'm all about that. We want to minimize static stretching. That means this. I'm not so sure that's effective anymore. If I have to stretch that muscle, it's going to be more like this now. Dynamic movements. Not just yanking on a muscle for a minute. So I don't really start workouts or dryland workouts with these big, long, static stretches. I think that's like an illusion or a placebo. For me, I always start my kids off with what we call a walk squat. They just, I say walk down to the room and the end of that room and back. Squat whenever you feel like it. When you squat, get in the squat, relax, think about where all those muscles are that are clenched, tight, or sore. Relax them a little bit, and then keep walking. Do it and come back. That's the first thing. Then the second thing I'll do is open it up, hip circles of some kind. Up, over, out, down. Drag. Up, over, out, down. Drag. Or if you're more balanced than me, you can just make that movement in a circle on your own. Kids should be able to do it without holding on here like I am. But you want to get that pelvis open. All this before you start doing anything. Drag lifts. Sumo slides like that. And then Spider-Man crawls, which, do you know what that is? Please don't make me get down and do that. On all fours, knee facing this way, and then knee facing this way. Kind of like this. God help me. Wait. Yeah. Little ones. Too old for this, but yeah. Little ones, this is super valuable. That's super valuable because it stretches their entire body out and it gives them a lot of awareness of where they are in space and involves their hips. Back raises for balance. That's just laying on the ground, either hands at your side or hands behind your head, and just lifting up. A few inches, back down. You're starting to strengthen that back for everything that comes afterwards. And there is a somewhat of a safety issue here, but I have to mention it. One of the most valuable things for my athletes is the ability to do a handstand against a wall. And it's hard for them to learn. They have to learn it with a partner. They have to learn it with, in a safe environment that you have to make for them. But if they can hold themselves up on their hands, it sends messages to their brains about where everything is that absolutely transfer to the water. Do it on a gym mat or something until they learn it. But it's a super valuable primary movement. And then the last thing we do before we start, the children's dry land is what we call walk, jog, sprint. Even in a room or in a circle or outside, they just go and I do not control it, I let them control it. They just walk, they jog, and they sprint. Either back and forth, around in a circle. And then after that, they're sort of ready to learn some more and train. Ab work. These are just some exercises that we do and we like. Bicycles. When I mean bicycles, I just mean kind of laying down and moving your legs like a bicycle. Wide leg sit-ups. Laying all the way down with your feet splayed and then sitting up. V-ups. Planks. These are the next steps in the advancement of your kids. V-ups, where you lay down and collapse your body this way, sometimes on one leg, sometimes across the leg, and sometimes with both hands and both legs. Back supported crunches. That just means laying flat. And then just bringing your knees up to your stomach and having the kids grab their own heels. That's one. Stretch back out. Do it again. That's two. Again, we've gone from primary movements to slightly more advanced movements. Medicine balls in their ankles. Lift it and raise it. Have you ever done that? Lay down, put the ball between their ankles, do a leg raise. Now you're starting to move up the chain of movement. Partner throws, I talked about that. To me, the primary one is a squat throw, but then it can advance. You've all seen it. You've seen all the medicine ball moves. I don't think there's anything better than ballistic movements. And the ball provides the ballistic, both support and weight to throw against. Catching it is important, reacting to it is important, and throwing it is important. All this will carry over into your swimming. Leg crawls and Swiss ball work. I'm sure this is all stuff that you have in your gym or wherever you do dry land. I just wanted to make sure that you understand the theory behind why those things are there and how you can use them, how important they can be to you. Next, moving higher up the chain, when I get kids 13 and 14, now I'm looking for the overhead bar. If you can get one of those, not just to tie your TRXs to, but to actually use, I think they are massively important. To me, hanging a child on a bar, they hang on a bar and lift both their legs up as high as they can. That will tell you more about their potential to maintain a swimming position than anything else on land. Now, that doesn't mean if they can't do it right away, or if they're not a natural, that you give up with them. But I am telling you that once you get a kid to improve that skill at holding on to freestyle and backstroke and butterfly will go right up. It will improve right with that skill. If I only had one exercise to do, that would be it. If I only had one thing, for me, for a developmental athlete, that's what it would be. You can do circles on the overhead bar, which is hanging on the bar, lifting both knees, and then while, look at me, I can't even do it with one leg, while holding on to the bar, having them make circles. It's an extreme ab stress, and it's very valuable to making the core tighter and harder and stronger, which is what you need to hold the balanced position. Pull-ups, obvious. The strength to weight ratio of the body, super important. But having said that, you want to make sure that people are starting in the position I told you, into full extension, not hyperextension. If they're reaching for that bar and starting so with their elbows locked out and having it go from there, that's not going to be super helpful. I'd rather pick them up or assist them and have them start with just a little bit of curve and move no different than their ape ancestors of a million years ago. Lateral pull-ups. That's probably something that most people don't know or don't do, which is, imagine the bar's over your head and you're going like this, pulling them both at the same time, but not asymmetrically, just in two different positions, but at the same time. You want to make sure, however, that your shoulder stays in the socket. Actually, doing it this way, it's almost, it absolutely maintains, it's much better to keep your shoulder in the socket. And you know, if people can't do pull-ups, there's ways of assisting yourself with a band. You can wrap a towel around the thing and hold on to the towel. There are ways to get around beginning children's, not inadequacies, but, you know, to get them to learn along the way. And then even partial scapular pull-ups. Just move a little way, let it down. Move a little way, let it down. So that your back gets as much training or gets some training to match what's happening in swimming when your front gets all the training. Okay? Medicine ball exercises. The next step up the chain of development. And, you know, one of the most valuable ones that there is. You can do millions of things with it. This goes back, I don't even know, 50, 100 years. I'm not exactly sure how long people have been using the medicine balls, but what a great invention. You can throw it, you can move while throwing it, you can catch it, and it's at least been around since the 1930s, probably before that. It's extremely customizable and allows for movement-specific innovation. What I mean by that is you can think of your own things. You can make up your own exercises based on the kid that's standing in front of you and what stroke they need to swim and how they need to swim it. And I've seen every movement with that ball. Every movement. Yeah, it's okay. What it says is the medicine balls are useful for all levels, not just young swimmers, more senior swimmers as well. The dynamic nature of the medicine balls allows for the safer repetition and the development of functional muscular depth over time that can help swimmers. What I mean by that is, if you throw that thing a few thousand times, the act of catching it, the act of throwing it, will recruit new muscle fibers. Very slowly, very microscopically. But over years, the depth of your muscular strength will, a tiny piece at a time, get a bit thicker, more robust, and stronger, without any risk of injury, or I should say minimal risk of injury, and overuse injuries and fatigue-based injuries. It's a fantastic tool. Here's some of the exercises that we could use: squat throws, chest pass, overhead throws. And can I say, you can just go on the internet and type in any of these terms and watch someone do it. That's why I didn't bother showing you videos. I'm only going to show you videos of some strange stuff. But this kind of stuff is so used by so many people around the world that you can do it. Bouncing off of a wall, pass while kicking. That's one of my favorites. Imagine laying down, your partner standing up with the medicine ball. They drop the medicine ball, and the swimmer kicks. The swimmer kicks while they throw the medicine ball up. It's a great little exercise for the young ones to kind of get them going. Asymmetrical work, like I was talking about before, alternate arm push-ups, combinations of, sometimes I'll get them with the ball, sit up with the ball, 1, 2, 3, stand up, push and throw it. The other person catches it, goes down, lays down, sits up with the ball, 1, 2, 3. All this kind of work. I think you get the idea of all the things that are possible with the medicine ball. And I will push you to, go on the net and check things out. Again, moving up the chain a little more. TRX. I know some of you use that. And here's some TRX exercises that we can go through. My favorite is what I call the atomic push-up, which is you put the TRX in their feet, and they push up from the ground. Their feet are suspended, push up into a inverted V, back down. Inverted V, back down. Just laying on the ground, holding it, pulling your back up a little bit, and coming back down. That's great for the back scapular plane. You can lay on the thing and do tricep extensions using your own body weight. They're great. All these exercises work pretty well. All right, moving up even higher. Now we're into stretch cords or swim bench exercises. And you want to develop exercises and patterns for your own personal swimmers that will match the events that they're doing. You want to set up a training scheme that can be physiologically compatible with the training phase at each part of your season or developmental stage. So, for example, this morning when we were talking about practices, people were doing 10-50s where they go 25 fast and 25 easy. You can do the same thing with the cord or the bench. You can pull on it for 15 or 20 seconds as hard as you can, and then for 20 seconds more, not so hard. On a bench, you can change the resistance. Sometimes you want to pull for several minutes without stopping, if that's the phase of the season that you're in. So what you want to do is you're not just thinking about increasing strength or power. What you're doing with whatever exercise you're using, you want to match that to the physiological preparation that you are making for your swimmers. I gave a little example here of kind of an exercise pattern. 20 seconds on, 10 seconds rest, 8 times. "90 seconds on, 30 seconds rest. Do as many reps as you possibly can, 5 times. "4 minutes on, 1 minute rest, as fast as possible. Repeat 4 times. Now, if you were doing these kind of patterns with some kind of independent weight system, I would say don't do it because it's dangerous. If you lose control of the weight before you're in some kind of, before you're in the resting period, you can have an injury. But with a quarter or a bench, you don't have to worry about that. Because you know if you're going to have some kind of failure, there's a minimal chance of injury. Okay? All right, we're going to take a little break for a bit. And what I'll do is think of your questions when you have this break, 10 minutes, and then when you come back, we'll answer some questions and we'll finish this off, and I'll show you a couple movement videos as well. All right? 10 minutes.